The tower rises from the plain of Shinar like a challenge carved into the sky. Workers move in coordinated lines, passing bricks molded from river clay and hardened in the sun. Bitumen bubbles in heated pits. Its thick black surface stirred with wooden poles before being carried in heavy jars to the construction site. The air is filled with the sound of shouted instructions, the scrape of stone tools, and the rhythmic thud of bricks being set into place. The structure grows higher each day, its stepped levels climbing above the surrounding landscape. Dust hangs in the air as thousands labor under the heat, driven by a single ambition: to build a monument that reaches the heavens, to create a center of unity so powerful that no force on earth can scatter them. The tower dominates the horizon. Its base is wide enough to hold entire neighborhoods. Ramps spiral upward, allowing workers to ascend with loads of brick and mortar. The smell of bitumen clings to the wind. The plain around the tower is filled with tents, workshops, and storage pits. This is not a small project. It is a coordinated effort involving engineering, logistics, and a unified population. A civilization determined to leave its mark on the world. The stakes are immense. This tower represents the first major urban project of the post-flood world. A moment when humanity gathers in one place, speaks one language, and directs its collective strength toward a single goal. The tower is more than a structure. It is a symbol of identity, ambition, and unity. A monument that reflects the technological and cultural capabilities of early civilizations. The mystery is whether this event corresponds to real historical developments. Whether the tower reflects actual architectural practices. Whether the plain of Shinar aligns with known archaeological sites. Whether the sudden diversification of languages has a historical or environmental basis. And whether the scattering of people across the earth corresponds to real patterns of early human migration. The investigation begins with the first major discovery. A discovery that reveals how the earliest urban centers emerged from the plains of Mesopotamia and how their architectural achievements align with the description of the tower. Please like this video to help support evidence-based Bible documentaries. Evidence 1. The discovery. The first major piece of evidence lies in the archaeological record of early Mesopotamian cities. Excavations across the region reveal that the earliest urban centers emerged on the alluvial plains between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. These cities developed rapidly, displaying advanced architectural techniques, organized labor systems, and monumental construction projects. The claim is that the Tower of Babel narrative reflects the real architectural and cultural environment of early Mesopotamian civilization. The source of this evidence is the archaeological remains of cities such as Eridu, Uruk, and ancient Babylon. These sites contain the earliest known examples of large-scale construction using baked bricks and bitumen. The use of these materials is significant. Baked bricks provided durability and uniformity, while bitumen served as an effective mortar and waterproofing agent. The combination of these materials allowed for the construction of massive structures that could withstand the elements. The connection to the Tower of Babel is direct. The narrative describes a construction project using bricks and bitumen. This aligns precisely with the building techniques of early Mesopotamia. The presence of bitumen pits, brick kilns, and large-scale brick production facilities at archaeological sites confirms that these materials were widely used in monumental architecture. The most compelling example is the Ziggurat. These stepped temple towers were built throughout Mesopotamia and served as the architectural centerpieces of major cities. The Ziggurat of Uruk, for example, rose in multiple tiers and required millions of bricks to construct. Its design included ramps, staircases, and platforms that resemble the structure described in the Tower of Babel narrative. This matters because it shows that the technology and architectural style described in the narrative were not only possible but common in the region. The tower described in the narrative fits within the known architectural tradition of Mesopotamian ziggurats. The use of baked bricks and bitumen, the stepped design, and the monumental scale all align with archaeological evidence. The discovery deepens when examining the urban environment of early Mesopotamia. Cities such as Uruk grew rapidly, becoming centers of trade, administration, and religious activity. These cities required coordinated labor forces, resource management, and centralized authority. The construction of monumental structures served as symbols of unity and identity for the population. The Tower of Babel narrative reflects this environment: a unified population, a centralized construction project, a monumental structure intended to serve as a symbol of identity. The narrative aligns with the social and political dynamics of early Mesopotamian cities. The plain of Shinar corresponds to the southern Mesopotamian plain, where the earliest cities emerged. The geography matches the description: a flat, fertile region capable of supporting large populations and monumental construction projects. The presence of rivers provided water for agriculture and clay for brick production. The availability of bitumen in nearby regions provided the necessary materials for construction. The significance of this discovery is that it anchors the Tower of Babel narrative within a real historical and geographical context. The architectural techniques, materials, and urban environment described in the narrative align with the earliest known civilizations of Mesopotamia. This evidence sets the stage for the second major discovery, a discovery that confirms the historical plausibility of the narrative by revealing how early languages, cultures, and populations developed and diversified in the ancient world. If you are finding this fascinating, consider subscribing so you do not miss the next investigation. Evidence 2. The confirmation. The second major piece of evidence comes from the study of ancient languages and the patterns of early human migration. The claim is that the sudden diversification of languages, scribed in the Tower of Babel narrative, corresponds to real linguistic and cultural developments in the ancient world. The source of this evidence is the comparative study of ancient language families, archaeological records of early settlements, and genetic data tracing human migration patterns. The earliest written languages emerged in Mesopotamia. Cuneiform script, developed by the Sumerians, represents one of the oldest known writing systems. This script was used to record administrative, economic, and religious information. The presence of a unified writing system suggests a high degree of linguistic cohesion in early Mesopotamian society. However, the linguistic landscape changed rapidly. Within a relatively short period, multiple language families emerged in the region. Sumerian, Akkadian, Elamite, Hurrian, and others appear in the archaeological record. These languages are distinct, with different grammatical structures, vocabularies, and phonetic systems. The sudden appearance of multiple languages in a region that previously displayed linguistic unity aligns with the narrative of language diversification. This matters because it provides historical confirmation of a key element of the Tower of Babel narrative. The emergence of multiple languages in the ancient Near East is not a gradual process spread over tens of thousands of years. It occurs within the time frame associated with the rise of early civilizations. The confirmation deepens when examining patterns of human migration. Genetic studies show that early human populations dispersed rapidly from the Near East into Europe, Africa, and Asia. These migrations correspond to the archaeological record of new settlements appearing across vast regions. The sudden expansion of populations aligns with the narrative of people being scattered across the earth. Environmental evidence supports this interpretation. Climatic shifts during the early post-flood period created new habitable regions, encouraging migration. Changes in river courses, rainfall patterns, and agricultural conditions forced communities to relocate. These environmental pressures contributed to the diversification of cultures and languages. The presence of shared cultural motifs across distant civilizations suggests a common origin. Flood traditions, architectural similarities, and early legal structures appear in regions separated by thousands of miles. These shared elements indicate that early human populations carried common memories and practices before dispersing. The Tower of Babel narrative reflects this pattern. A unified population, a sudden diversification of languages, a rapid scattering across the earth. The convergence of linguistic, archaeological, and genetic evidence confirms that these developments occurred in the ancient world. The tension increases when examining the role of monumental architecture in early civilizations. Ziggurats, pyramids, and other stepped structures appear in multiple regions. While not identical, these structures share common design principles. The presence of similar architectural forms across distant cultures suggests a shared architectural tradition carried by migrating populations. This discovery confirms that the Tower of Babel narrative aligns with real historical developments. The diversification of languages, the scattering of populations, and the spread of architectural traditions all correspond to the patterns observed in the ancient world. This evidence sets the stage for the final and strongest discovery, a revelation that uncovers the symbolic and structural significance of the tower and shows how it reflects the earliest attempts of humanity to establish a unified cultural and religious identity. Do you have anything to add to the conversation? Please add your voice to the comments below. Evidence 3. The Revelation. The final and most compelling piece of evidence lies in the symbolic and structural significance of the tower itself. The claim is that the Tower of Babel reflects the earliest known attempts of humanity to create a centralized cultural and religious system. The source of this evidence is the study of ancient temple towers, religious practices, and the role of monumental architecture in early civilizations. Ziggurats served as the religious and administrative centers of Mesopotamian cities. These structures were designed to connect the earthly realm with the divine. Their step design symbolized the ascent from the human world to the realm of the gods. The construction of a ziggurat required immense resources, labor, and coordination. It represented the unity and identity of the city. The Tower of Babel narrative describes a structure that aligns with the design and purpose of a ziggurat, a tower built to reach the heavens, a monument intended to unify the population, a structure that reflects the technological and cultural capabilities of early Mesopotamian civilization. This matters because it reveals the symbolic significance of the tower. It was not merely a construction project. Was an attempt to establish a centralized cultural and religious identity, a monument that represented the collective ambition of humanity. The revelation deepens when examining the role of language in early civilizations. Language served as the foundation of cultural identity. A unified language allowed for coordinated labor, shared traditions, and centralized administration. The sudden diversification of languages would have disrupted these systems, leading to the scattering of populations and the formation of new cultural groups. The Tower of Babel narrative reflects this dynamic. The confusion of languages disrupts the construction project, forcing the population to disperse. This aligns with the historical pattern of early civilizations fragmenting into distinct cultural and linguistic groups. The structural features of the tower also reveal its significance. The use of baked bricks and bitumen allowed for the construction of structures far larger than those built with stone or mud brick alone. This technological advancement enabled the creation of monumental architecture that symbolized the power and identity of early civilizations. The presence of similar structures across distant regions suggests that the architectural tradition of the ziggurat influenced other cultures. Pyramids in Egypt, step temples in Mesoamerica, and other monumental structures share design principles with Mesopotamian ziggurats. This indicates that early architectural traditions spread through migrating populations. The emotional and historical impact of this revelation is profound. It shows that the Tower of Babel narrative reflects the earliest attempts of humanity to create a unified cultural and religious identity. It aligns with the architectural, linguistic, and cultural developments of the ancient world, and it reveals that the tower stands at the intersection of history, technology, and human ambition. Please consider sharing this video to someone you know if you believe they might find it interesting in watching evidence-based Bible documentaries like this one. The evidence converges on a single conclusion. The Tower of Babel narrative reflects real, historical, architectural, and cultural developments in the ancient world. The use of baked bricks and bitumen aligns with early Mesopotamian construction techniques. The sudden diversification of languages corresponds to the rapid emergence of distinct linguistic groups. The scattering of populations aligns with the archaeological and genetic evidence of early human migration. Together, these discoveries reveal a narrative rooted in the earliest phases of human civilization. A narrative that reflects the technological capabilities, cultural ambitions, and environmental realities of the ancient world. The Tower of Babel stands as a symbol of humanity's first attempt to build a unified identity, a monument that rose from the plains of Shinar and left its mark on the history of the world.